Hi there, my name is Molly Cooney and I work for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. I am here today to talk a little bit about the Employment First initiative. First, though, I want to share a little bit about the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. We're often known as BPDD. We are a state agency. We are based in Madison, but we aim to reach statewide. We are mandated to exist by the federal government, and every state has a developmental disabilities council. And all councils are charged with really trying to work on advocacy, so supporting people with disabilities and their family members to strengthen their advocacy voice about what they want and need. And we also do a lot of advocacy with the legislature and state agency leadership. We're also an innovation organization, so we really work hard to identify what the most pressing needs of people with developmental disabilities is, what the needs are of their family members, and then working to develop some innovative and cost-effective ways to meet those needs. Once we identify that, we work to scale it up. So we do a lot of work, like I said, with public policy and with the legislature, because we're trying to make systemic change, trying to change service systems to work better for people with disabilities. And those systems also include employment, because we're trying to find ways to support people to live full lives in their communities, however they see fit. So we have a number of projects and initiatives that help us with that goal. At the end of my presentation, you will see a number of slides related to these different projects and initiatives. In the description for this presentation, there will be a link to that PowerPoint, which will include all of these slides, so you'll be able to see that. So we have projects on supported decision-making, the Self-Determination Conference, which is held in the fall. We have a self-determination YouTube channel, a project called Living Well, which is working to increase the health, safety, and connection of people who are receiving services in their communities. We have Sparks grants, which are small grants that are available each year to support an organization, a family group, an individual who really wants to work on connecting people to their community. We have Families Supporting Families grants. We have Youth Leadership Forum, which is a summer program. It's a one-week program at Edgewood College in Madison. Students with disabilities who are sophomores, juniors, or seniors with any type of disability who are interested in leadership are welcome to apply and participate. We have Partners in Policymaking. We have a voting project, Take Your Legislator to Work, Partners with Business project, which I will talk about a little bit in a minute, and then Disability Advocacy Day. So those are just some of the projects that we work on that I wanted to make sure you are aware of. And again, if you check the link within the description of this presentation, you can pull up that PowerPoint to look at those projects more closely. You can also check out our website, which is wi-bpdd.org/, and that's where you can learn more about our organization and the things we do. So a little bit about our employment initiatives, past and present. We currently have a project called Partners with Business, and this is where we work with employers to learn how their coworkers, the coworkers, can provide support to the employee with a disability rather than relying exclusively on outside job coaching. So this project is really following best practices for supported employment, and we provide technical assistance and a small amount of funding to businesses, employment service providers, school districts to implement the model. We also have a project called Take Your Legislator to Work, where people with disabilities, employees with disabilities, invite their legislator to come visit them at work. They give them a quick tour, show them what they do on the job, and then have a chance to introduce the legislator to the person's boss and their coworkers. So this is a great opportunity for the employee with a disability to get to know their legislator a little bit and to talk about why employment is so important to them. And it's a great opportunity for the legislator to learn more about how the employee with the disability benefits from having a job in the community, and also how that work site is positively impacted by having that individual work at the location. So we're trying to develop more champions in the legislature who will be more mindful of people with disabilities when they advocate for or sign legislation. We used to organize an annual conference called the Employment First Conference. We have passed the baton on to another organization. Wisconsin APSE will be coordinating it this year in 2022. So save the date in case that's of interest to you. That's going to be on May 24th, 2022. If you're watching this in a different year, just keep in mind that the conference is usually in May, so you can kind of keep your feelers out to see when that actually is being scheduled for. We had an initiative called Building Full Lives, which we focused on helping employment and day service providers who were interested in moving away from facility-based services and more towards community-based services. So getting people connected to their communities, working, recreating, volunteering, getting really more engaged and involved with their community. And then the Let's Get to Work project has been a few years since this project existed, but it has had a lasting legacy. We really focused on supporting high schools to use best practices for transition. And the Transition Improvement Grant, or TIG, has adopted a lot of those strategies and carried them forward. So let's get into employment first. So what is the employment first movement? So it's an idea, a movement, or an initiative that's really working to support the inclusion of people with the most significant disabilities in the workplace. So we're really talking about getting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities into jobs in their community at minimum wage or higher, where they're working alongside other people without disabilities. So under the employment first approach, community-based integrated employment, like I said, at minimum wage or higher, needs to be the first option for employment services for youth and adults with significant disabilities. So that's where service dollars should focus first for people. That way they're getting exposed to an opportunity in the community to see what they like, what they don't like, what their skills are. And that's how we're supporting people to be able to make more informed choices about where they want to be. So this next slide has a map of the United States on it with lots of colors and some distracting orangish circles. And it is the employment first activity in our country. So the different states, the colors represent what kind of activity is happening in that state. So the green states, and there's probably about 12 of them, have legislation and an executive order from their governor. The states that are yellow, which is probably about 10-ish, have legislation, and you'll notice that Wisconsin is yellow, so we have a piece of legislation that passed, so that's very exciting. The blue states, which is more, maybe about 15 or so, those states have an executive order from their governor. The gray states, which is about 7 or 8, they have some type of employment first activity, but not an executive order and not a piece of legislation yet. They're probably working to make that happen. And then the dark gray state, which is really just one state that I'm seeing here, they have no activity right now. So really, most of our country has action and activity trying to support the employment first support or approach, pardon me. So why do we want to support employment first in our state? Well, one main reason is that most counties in Wisconsin, the people that receive long-term services, only about 10%, a very small percentage of them, are actually working in their communities at minimum wage or higher. However, we know that when good policies and good procedures are in place, so when our service systems are aligned, when our school district is working with long-term care and the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, we can get much higher numbers of people working in the community. People want to work, people express that they want to work, they want to be a part of their community in this way. And we believe that work is really possible for anyone who wants to do it. So in 2017, Act 178 passed. This is the employment first legislation. On the slide, there's a screenshot of the most recent plan, joint plan, which I'll explain in just a moment. On the slide, there's also a link to the legislation. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, you can click that when you check out the PowerPoint. The legislation really requires that our state agencies of DVR, which is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, DHS, which is the Department of Health Services, and DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, requires those 3 state agencies to work together to create a joint plan to increase the employment outcomes for people with more significant disabilities. So on their website, which I have linked on in the PowerPoint, there's a link to the current plan. And then every year they have to do a report to show what they're doing and what the outcomes are so far. There's also a lot of other resources on that webpage, so I suggest checking it out. There's some good stuff there, but you also can find the current plan and the current reports. So we're excited that this piece of legislation passed 5 years ago now, but we know there's still a lot of work to be done. So one thing we need to work on is we need to build awareness in communities and with businesses that people with disabilities want to work and that they're excellent employees, and that they contribute positively to the workplace. There's still a lot of attitudinal barriers that are getting in the way from that happening. And just a quick couple of statistics that are really interesting. People with disabilities, employees with disabilities, turnover rate is only 8%. Employees without disabilities turnover rate is about 45%. So if there's a benefit with a disability, because the likelihood is that they're going to stick around longer than another employee. The amount of supervision employees with disabilities need versus an employee without a disability is about the same. And their performance reviews are often fairly similar. So we need to support businesses to realize that people with disabilities can be excellent employees. We need to also provide more opportunities for people with disabilities to explore their interests and build their skills in the community. When people don't have opportunities to explore, when they're children, when they're teenagers, don't have opportunities to identify what they want, what they like, what they don't like, it's harder for them as an adult to advocate for what would be a good job for them, what would be a good job match based on their interests, their skills, what kind of work setting they want to be in, etc. So we really need to support people to have opportunities to get in the community and try things out, because that's what will lead to motivation and excitement about work. We know that we need to support schools more to follow best practices for transition services for youth. There's a lot of research that shows that one paid job while someone in high school, they are 2 times as likely to have a paid job when they leave school. If you have 2 paid jobs while you're in high school, you are 5 times as likely to have a paid job when you leave high school. So we know that those paid jobs while you're in high school are essential to getting a paid job when you leave high school. So we need to support schools to really focus on helping people get a job in their community. And we're not talking about volunteer work, we're talking about a paid job. We also need to ensure that our state agencies are working together, that they're aligning their efforts to increase employment outcomes. And that's what that piece of legislation that I just talked about is really trying to do. But we also have a role in checking in about that, find out what's happening, what progress is being made. We also need to support our families to see the possibilities that exist for their children and to have high expectations for them. We need to be better, we being professionals, at really listening to and trying to address their concerns. Not stop their concerns, but helping them think through their concerns, and perhaps finding some ways that, small steps can be taken to support a person to be in the community more, to try something out, maybe to volunteer, and then grow to maybe getting a job or having a couple hours of paid work. So we need to do a better job of listening and trying to understand people's concerns. So one of the reasons why it's so important to engage families is that their expectations are a huge predictor of a child's outcomes. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. But what a parent or a family member believes for their child is a huge predictor of whether or not that child, when they grow up, will do that thing. We need to support families more to draw on their expertise and to address their concerns. This is really important and essential. They are a key partner in all of our efforts, and we need to find ways to partner with them, as I just said before. Families' voices are really strong and influential to decision makers and to each other. So when we want to support people to advocate, parent voices are the strong voices that get heard from based on that experience they have. And they're also very strong voices to one another. So when one family has a positive experience with their child working in the community, that's really impactful to other families to hear. And we need to also think about supporting children's and youth's opportunities to make choices and decisions in their young years. And this goes back to that, having an opportunity to be involved in the community and experience things and have some choices. So when we give people the opportunity to practice making choices from a young age, they're more equipped to make decisions when they become 18 and older, and they have more practice and opportunity to do that. And finally, there is something called dignity of risk. And this is really about the basic human right to make your own decisions, to take risks, and to live a life that you choose. So there's often a tendency for us to be overprotective of people, to not want them to get hurt, but we do need to give people opportunities to try things out and to make mistakes, because that's often really where humans learn best, is by making mistakes and then making a different decision next time. We're using that mistake to help inform our future decision. And when we take away risk, we really are limiting people's opportunity to experience life to the fullest. So back to the power of parent expectations. So Eric Carter was a professor at UW-Madison for a number of years, and he's now at Vanderbilt. And he wrote this incredible article that I'm going to share with you in just a moment, but I want to read one of the quotes from that article. So in the article, he talks about a particular study that he did with a couple of other people. And he said, "We found that young adults with significant disabilities, whose parents expected them to obtain post-school work way back when they were in high school, were more than 5 times as likely to have paid community employment within 2 years of exiting." So I'm going to read that again because it's a little bit dense, but he's essentially saying that parents of young adults with disabilities, the parents believed that their kid would have a job when they left school, those students were 5 times as likely to have a job within 2 years after leaving school. And he said in the article, the unexpected finding, because they knew parent expectations were strong, but the unexpected finding was that these expectations were a stronger predictor than anything else they examined. So they looked at student demographics, they looked at the social communication and independent skills of the students, and they looked at the types of school programs and transition experiences students had access to. And they found that none of those other factors were as strong of a predictor of whether or not that student would be working when they leave school as if the parents and the family members believed it. So, he talked about, if you want to more than triple the odds that students will find a place in their community to work, then we really need to focus a lot of our efforts on supporting the expectations parents hold for their children, because that's where a lot of the power is. And then I'm going to read this one final paragraph. I'm sorry, I'd love to read the entire article because it's so good, but he says, finally, we must let parent expectations challenge ours. There is a tension here we must release. Professionals are sometimes reluctant to encourage parents to hope large because it ultimately will require us to do things different, demand us to invest differently. We must be willing to let families show us what is possible when their vision exceeds our own. Indeed, this is how the field has always moved forward fastest. So if you want to read this article, the next slide here has a screenshot of the article. It's on the right side. It says, "What matters most? Research on elevating parent expectations." And there's a link on the page that you can click to get to the article. It's fantastic. And then the other side of my slide has another screenshot of a webinar that Sean Roy has done. Sean Roy works for Transcend. He's based in the Twin Cities area in Minnesota, and he does a lot of work about supporting and partnering with families. He is a sibling himself, so he's bridged both this, the family member and the professional world. And this webinar is really about how to partner with families working towards employment success. So he's big on figuring out ways to listen to families, hear them, understand what their concerns are, and how to partner with them and support their concerns and try to figure things out to help people move forward. So I'm going to wrap up my presentation here. My name again is Molly Cooney, and I work for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. My email address is on the slide, molly.cooney@wisconsin.gov. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm not going to go through the final slides on my PowerPoint, but they will be, as I said before, in the description where the video is linked. You can find the PowerPoint and you can see the other initiatives that our project or our organization coordinates each year. So thank you for your time.
Have a great day.